Shane's head's cut off.
I just got to sit back.
How are you guys doing tonight?
All right, we're live.
We're just going to check our social network stations quickly. Make sure that everybody can see us. Let me check everything. Just a sec.
Shane, Joe, how are your days going today?
I'm actually having a pretty rough day. I had a bad cold going on, but other than that, life is good.
Oh man, last time I wholesaled something to you, you were having a bad cold also. It was like over a year ago.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with that.
Oh man.
Boy. Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, everything's going well on my side. Fortunately, I've still got health. And I was telling Josh, I try to be like Josh, no problems, no worries,
Man, no worries, right? No worries.
When I grow up, I want to be just like Josh, yeah. Until then, I'm just like Dr. Joe. Huh?
All right, guys, I've checked our social media networks. We are live across all platforms. We're on YouTube tonight. We're on Facebook in DMV Dealmakers. We're in several different profiles. I guess tonight's topic, John, is what now?
How to analyze deals in this COVID climate. And it's not necessarily how you think or how you've been doing it before, just straight up looking at the numbers. A lot of times you gotta get a little bit creative, right, Josh?
I think the big topic tonight is that, with coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic, financing, especially for investors, has become a little bit problematic.
A lot of lenders have backed out or just gone out of business. Like more than half of the hard money lenders are gone.
You sort of had to change your strategy as far as how you go about doing deals. So tonight, we're privileged to have Mr. Shane Umstead here and Dr. Joe Asamoah. Both of them have very unique business models, and we're going to go into depth tonight with each of them about how they do what they do. What have they changed since the coronavirus pandemic started, and where do they see their business going from here? So with that, we'll start it out. Shane, if you could go first and just sort of introduce yourself to our audience tonight.
Sure. My name is Shane Umstead. I started in real estate investing in 2003. So I'm actually the young one here compared to Joe.
That's a great head.
But so I have an interesting career from the engineering school, of course, and the .com. I left that. I left the .com. I built like a large healthcare thing for about $25 million in commercial healthcare, and decided to go out on my own. So I kind of jumped in. I'm just going to try to save some time for everyone, but I just kind of assessed the business, and I thought initially when I started in 2003, the best place to be, Josh, would be a builder, and subsequently built a couple hundred homes, all in the Prince George's, Montgomery County area. And at the end of the crisis in 2008, I had a savings account that was going down every month, a 401k account that was going down every month, 3 properties that I got caught with mid-stride because I didn't know how to evaluate the properties to see if it would cash flow. Wasn't as smart as Joe early on. I just thought you could fix and flip your way to freedom. But that being said, the income was tremendous during that time, but it's all about putting some type of residual continuity income, having different streams or different things. And there's so much noise in the marketplace right now, you don't even know who to listen to. In general, if you're starting out and you're new, and I would say that's probably the most critical thing at the moment is get away from the people that can just regurgitate it and get with the people that are in the trenches and the practitioners that are in the field that are doing this business. And I've been doing this for a long time, and certainly Joe has too as well. And we have the property to do for them. We're still standing. But this COVID-19 is unprecedented of how we're going to proceed and what needs to be done.
I gotcha. Dr. Joe, could you introduce yourself to our audience tonight?
Sure. My name is Joe Asamoah. Some people call me Dr. Joe. I used to live in England, and I came to the US in '85, before everybody here was born.
That's a good thing, Joe.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I bought my first house in DC in '87, 2 years after I came to the US. It was in Columbia Heights. I bought it for $47,000, and people told me I was getting ripped off. I was paying too much for this house. Cut a long story short, it was a disaster. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Looking back, is probably the best thing that could have happened to me because I learned so much about it. I turned that thing around. I bought another one, just kept on going. And in 2003, my income from my rental properties equaled what I was making at my salary at my job, which was my ultimate goal, which was to passive income, residual income. So I was able to meet that milestone in 2003. Essentially, since then, I've been full-time in real estate investing. Since 87, I've been through 4 real estate cycles. So I've been through some of these things, ups and downs, and I have a pretty good idea how they shake out, what works, what doesn't work. And through those experiences, it's kind of led me to what I do now. So I'm a proponent on long-term view of real estate, especially the DC area. DC area is a very unique market in the United States. And if you can own assets in the DC area, especially in Washington, DC, over the long haul, it tends to appreciate in value. The house that when I first bought in 87 for 47 is now worth 750. The cash flow I was making when I first bought that house was $50. Now the rent is $4,700. So all you need is a few of those, and it really can work. But you have to know what you're doing, and I'm sure we'll discuss that during this this event. But that's essentially a quick 3 minutes about who I am.
Awesome.
I think that's 3 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, Joe. So they call you Dr. Joe. What were your doctor in?
Yeah, I got electrical engineering degree, similar to Shane. So I have a kind of techie background. And in England at the time, there was a lot of engineers around who couldn't manage. So they created this PhD program whereby the first year you do an MBA. So I have an MBA. And then I did my PhD research here in the United States. That's what brought me here. So it's kind of a business information systems background.
Gotcha. It's interesting how many investors used to be engineers. We got a room full of engineers here.
4 of them on the call tonight, it looks like.
Okay.
Awesome.
So, John,
So Joe, we've seen you on Bigger Pockets, which is I would consider that to be probably the largest podcast here in this niche of real estate investing. Tell us a little bit how you got into, I guess, kind of the public side, because I think you've been in magazines as well, right? I think Washington Business Journal, is it?
Yeah. I've been Washington Business Journal. I was featured there, and the business Bigger Pockets. They have this magazine called Bigger Pockets Wealth, and they have the inaugural issue is coming out this month, in fact, and lo and behold, they chose me as the investor to focus on. So they wrote a pretty good article about me. But essentially, that's not really the issue. The issue is, I bumped into somebody at a REIA meeting, and we were just talking, and he was interested in what I was doing. I invited him to one of my projects, and we just got going. It's just by coincidence he worked for Bigger Pockets, and we sort of developed that relationship. I've taught him, some of the things which I do. And it's just a coincidence that I was invited to the Brandon Turner's David Green's podcast in November. And it went very well. I got a lot of good feedback from that thing. And from that, it sort of emanated from there. So it's been a very good experience. And I enjoy what I do. I enjoy sharing. I believe the pie is big enough, in the niche that I'm focused on, which I can talk about later on. But, in Washington, D.C. area, as we all know, there's a housing crisis, especially, quote unquote, housing for low income families. And, I understand this group, this niche, and I've zeroed in on it, and it works. It works. And, it's recession resistant. I've been through these cycles enough times when I've rented to market renters. And, it's not nice when you have a good renter, tenant. It's just a good person, but they lose their job. and because of circumstances beyond their control, like what we're going through right now. And then you have to make a decision. What do you do? Do you work with that person, which you try to do? But at some point, if they can't pay, they can't pay. And if they decide to stay there, then you're going to have to take the legal action. And that's a very painful experience, and it can really ruin the relationship. So I kind of pivoted to Section 8 because it's a very stable income stream. And I know there's a lot of stereotypes associated with Section 8, which again I can discuss later on. But once you figure it out, and it's not that difficult to figure out, but once you can figure it out, then you can make it work even in high price markets like where we are, the DC area, where you're buying houses for 400, 500, 600,000, but you can still cash flow and you can still get stuff which you'll appreciate in value.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that. But I guess first, let's kind of backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about the strategies that you guys are using. I guess, Joe, you kind of briefly touched on the fact that you guys are doing buy and hold primarily in DC. Shane, what about yourself? Because I kind of get the impression Shane is not a one-trick pony. He has a million ways to carve a deal, and I think he's willing to do it a million ways to make the deal happen.
Yeah, there's absolutely, before we get away from what Joe was talking about, I'm well aware of his strategy and I like it. And it certainly is part of our arsenal moving forward. We were reluctant to move into DC proper because of the TOPA requirements, which were, get some relief. And the reason that was a stonewall for me initially is I wanted to have the ability to upgrade and move into other assets or whatever. But before I get down away from the single family, about 6 months ago, actually for the last 18 months, I've kind of been in a walking base for that. And most of my acquisitions, anyone that talked to me, I said, I told people, I'm like, I haven't made one single all cash offer in the last 18 months. And that was up to 2 months ago. So it's 20 months now. So I kind of recognized that there was problems on the horizon, but I really wanted to structure things in a way where I could buy them with private financing, either through the seller, short-term, intermediate, or long-term. And then I could set up my tenor buyers with financing. To Joe's point, I like what he's saying, and I've come to appreciate financing more and more to the civilian, because once I figured out how to do it and vet it and get the right down payment, then I had the security of the income stream for the people as well. But quality of the income, you have to have a quality house and you have to have quality income. If you don't have those two, then you're eventually going to lose the asset. It doesn't matter how ugly the asset is or how pretty the asset is. If you don't have good financing, you're just inventorying it for someone else later. That's it, bottom line. So what I've been doing is having a mixed bag. Some properties that we've renovated nicely, we do a multiple year lease. We try to find that tenant buyer ready to go that would like to buy in 13, 14 months out. And then we do in-house financing for it. And then once they refinance. So believe it or not, even right now in this climate, I had 2 clients last week that expressed interest in buying homes directly from us. And that's going to be even easier because, they don't have to go through all the hoops. All they need is a job, the income, the down payment, and they're good to go. And we're underwriting them the same way the banks do in the same rates. Now, I'm able to perform, in that up to $300,000 to $450,000. It's a different playbook when you're buying something for $600,000 to $700,000. Perhaps worth $1 million. And I'm sure Joe can talk about that. But most people just kind of look at the Section 8 list. They see what the vouchers pay. They try to do a value add, on those properties. And, if you turn out a really nice property, what I've learned is if you turn out a really nice property, whether it's a market tenant or a Section 8 tenant, and you know how to manage, and you treat them as the asset of the property, the people are the most important asset of the house, not the house. If you do that, you're going to do well. So that's worked out really well for us. So, for example, I'm going on an appointment probably tomorrow in Bowie. I'm willing to pay full market retail, but obviously it's going to be creative. It's going to be really creative. It might be no more than $5,000 down, but there's a lot of unique situations on there. The one party can't move because of COVID. They actually want to sell the property. They just don't want to handle the maintenance anymore. So you don't have to buy things for a deep discount as long as you structure the financing well. Now, I still like a discount. Don't get me wrong, right? But what that has allowed me to do is by hanging on to these properties and doing the financing play and the creative side of things, it's opened up the door for me. When I go on other acquisition appointments, I can do a different level 2 or level 3 deal making, where now I'm actually, maybe I don't like the property that I'm pursuing, and I've structured some type of seller financing with them, and I'll secure them on the better asset that we already own.
Shane, can you walk us through some numbers for the audience that's viewing this? Like you're buying the house in Bowie for, let's say, what, 300,000?
They're asking. We had 4 appointments on this one, by the way, and so they're asking 225 for it. It's probably worth 250. So there's really not much margin, but it's a beautiful starter townhome. It's right behind the Bowie High School, so it's really convenient, commercial, whatever. What's interesting about it is I think I can probably just do the starting offer that I'm going to do tomorrow with them, and we've been getting there. It's probably just no money down essentially, and maybe $600 or $700 a month, and the sister will stay there indefinitely, and then we'll just kind of step it up to the market rent.
So if you do no money down, though, I mean, does the seller have a mortgage on that property currently, or
Well,
what do they owe?
That's a good look. Let me take it a different way, because we're talking about $225,000 house. Let's just take it to DC for $800,000 house. If you've inherited, you're an older person, you have taxes and property on it. You could do a no money down situation on that deal, right? And what happens is the seller gets away from the expenses, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance and upkeep, and you can actually go into that deal now. That's a good way to structure a deal now. You could make a good price for that deal, and then ultimately in the future, when you sell it or do whatever you need to do, everyone gets paid off. Okay, so on the 225 deal, it's the market rents are conservatively $1,750. My rule of thumb is if I'm structuring things, I like to have no more than a third of the debt service if I'm using institutional financing, and we're not using any institutional financing, even today. So if it was institutional financing, I wouldn't want to go beyond 1/3 of the $600 a month for debt service because of climates like this.
So for our viewers, what you're saying is, like, if the rent was $2,000 a month, you wouldn't want PI to be more than 666 roughly.
Right. Now I've also changed my criteria because of, I want the 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. We're talking single family in the DC Metro now. 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, large basement, out back storage where people can actually move someone in and take on a boarder in times like this. It's extremely important for the income. That's what happens. Most people don't realize. They think when the foreclosures, things like that happen, rents go up. They actually don't. They get really soft and people cohabitate. And that gets back to what Joe's saying about the security of having it. So if you can have some great Section 8 properties, convenient to Metro, I have 2 projects that we're looking at, convenient to Metro and DC, that you can get a 4-bedroom or add an extra room and get in a 5-bedroom voucher. Get a couple of those and get some finance people, get some finance players like I'm talking about. That's definitely what you want to do. And for us, it's definitely gotten a lot easier because, like, for example, we placed the property in Temple Hills. It's convenient to Southeast, about 10 minutes, right? And the tenant just called us the other day, and his job is solid, and said, we'd like to buy the house. I said, great. So I'm going to send him a 1-page application, ask for $40. He'll probably qualify. You can just underwrite him just like a bank would, and then we'll just simply go to closing. So I'm not a real big fan of making things complicated these days, especially now. And that's one of the reasons we were able to be really successful in Prince George's County in 2008, 9, and 10, because the market was very soft and there was all these programs that people were relying on to get buyers into the house. So we started this Path to Homeownership program for folks. Just had to figure out how to underwrite it, do what needed to be done. And it sits well with people, especially if you have a large self-employed ITN type of, my wife. Full disclosure, I'm married to my wife, and she's not a fully documented U.S. citizen. And, not only is she unemployed because she works in food service, we just found out the other day, since we're filed jointly, together, neither one of us are going to get the stimulus check, which which was kind of sad for her, because that's what I was thinking about doing it. So you have a lot of these people that have their own businesses, strong income, that would like their own place, and they want to be treated really well. So there's a huge market for that. And we're not quite there yet, but the last time I think we'll get there. In 2008, I mean, it got to a point where if you had an interruption of employment by a month or two, then you just had to get your employment back on track to get a loan again. If a spouse was home taking care of someone that was sick, so that was a problem as well. But I think, Joe, around that time, was it you started in 2009 and 10, kind of ramped back up yourself a little bit on fixing and flipping as well?
Yeah, I mean, I started in '87, so. I mean, originally it was all buy and hold. I never kept any. I never sold anything.
That's what I thought.
A fix and flip was a 15-year hold, so if I want to hold it, I wouldn't buy it. And but I think in the sort of 2012, 13, when we gone from the bottom, kind of moving up, I started buying some houses and sort of flipping some of those houses. And I did that for a few years. I was still holding houses, but I flipped some houses. But I stopped about 3 4 years ago, because the margins were just getting thinner and thinner and thinner.
Yep.
It just wasn't worth it. So I just decided just to keep on holding these houses, but be a lot more selective where I buy. And because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if you've got, you can do all these calculations, Excel spreadsheets, and what your cash on cash return is going to be, what's your NOI is going to be, what's in your, all those sort of calculate. You can do all that all day long. What I realized was that if you can't get a good tenant that takes care of your house and pays you the rent, all those calculations are completely meaningless. And so I realized that the key to my success was making sure that I have a product that is likely to attract the kind of tenants that I'm looking for. And the kind of tenants I'm looking for are what I call, tier one, top of the line voucher holders. Because what I realized that these groups of people, they are no different than you and I. They want to live in a nice area just like you do. They don't want to be shot at no more than you do want to be shot at. They're very protective of their children and their family, just like you and I. The only difference is that they don't have any money. And as a result of that, they can't, relocate, move out or whatever. They're kind of stuck in their environment, but they don't want to be there. That's where they are. That's where they're stuck in. So if you provide a quality house in a quality area and you're a great landlord, you can attract these people. And these people, once they move into your home, they pay their rent religiously. They take care of your house. They are pleasant to deal with. And the key is they stay a long time. Yep. And my longest tenant is 23 years. I consistently get 10 to 15-year tenants. And that is not an accident. That's that's by going through 3 or 4 of these cycles and understanding that if you can't figure out how to keep people and let them stay in your home for a long time, you really make no money, because that turnover cost is really what kills you. All the profits, all the cash flow that you make every month gets wiped out whenever there's a turnover and there's a vacancy. So I realized that most investors, they tend to focus, obviously to maximize your profits, it's all about either you increase your income or reduce your expenses. And most investors tend to focus on the income side. How can I increase the rent by $50, $100, or whatever it is, okay? And I realized that is meaningless when you get a turnover. Because the turnover is going to cost you 2 to 3 months lost income. And if your rent is $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that's $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 every turnover. So which dwarfs the $100 rent increase. So I realized that the key to my success was to have strategies whereby I have zero turnover, zero. And that's why I sort of focusing on the kind of houses I buy, where I buy them, how I fix them up. And so I can attract these families who, in their eyes, this is a dream come true. This never in their wildest dreams did they ever think that they'll have an opportunity to live in this home. Because, I mean, there's a lot of stereotypes associated with Section 8. You know, oh, if I rent to Section 8, they're going to trash my house. Gangsters are going to be roaming the streets and, you know, hoodlums everywhere. You know, all those negative stereotypes. So a lot of landlords are scared of the program. A lot of landlords don't want to rent to them. But there's a lot of good families there. And so they just don't have the opportunity to move into nice houses in nice areas. And so when somebody provides them with that kind of product, you know, they resonate to that. And that's how I get like 10 to 15 applications per house when they become available. And therefore you can, you know, increase, or you can be very thorough on your screening process such that you can, you know, attract the creme de la creme. And when the creme de la creme come to your house, man, it's great. I mean, you know, I mean, it makes this business worthwhile, and that's why I love. I know you probably. I love being a landlord in DC to Section 8 voucher holders. How about that? You probably think I'm crazy, huh?
So, Dr. Joe, can you talk us through like a deal in DC, like an example of what you would do right now? Like, just give our viewers like an idea of how the numbers would look.
Okay, so I bought a house 2 weeks ago. So what's it called? So that's in the Old City neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Old City is like, you know, where H Street corridor and Capitol Hill kind of converge around there. So it's in a gentrifying area. It's on the path of growth. And I got that one. The house needs work. I got it for $449,000. Okay, $449,000. Let's just say $450,000 for argument's sake. We're gonna spend. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. So we're gonna turn that thing into a 5-bedroom, 3.5-bath house. Okay, so it's 3.1 to 5, 3.5. To do that, we're gonna spend about $175,000 on the rehab. It's a major rehab. Okay, this is not some paint and carpet job. This is a major rehab. So $175,000 on the rehab. Obviously, there's a lot of other costs associated with holding costs and tax and insurance. But let's just keep it simple. This is the 3rd house I bought on that block. I've got 2 other houses on that block. And in fact, the one where I did the Bigger Pockets podcast was the house next door to the one I bought a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, so the ARV, we're talking 760. That's the ARV. The you know, once it's all said and done, you know, I found a lender. They typically go about 83, 84% loan to value. A very unique lender. It's a commercial bank in Washington, D.C. So the note is PI is around let's just say for argument's sake, $4,000. It's probably it's 36, I think it is. Let's just say 3,600. Okay. And then you add on that TI, I don't know, 700.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it 43.
Yep.
So the rent is $5,462. Okay. Wow. So 5,462 is a rent. And the notes, so there's cash flow there, you know, over 1,000 growth. And you also got over 120,000 equity from day one.
Yep.
Okay. And you're in the path of gentrification, which means that hold that thing for 5 to 10 years, it's going to be worth a lot more than what it is today. And you got a family in there who loves it. You have a family in there who has absolutely no intentions of trashing the house. Who wants to be there for a long time, and they're going to take care of the property. So this is what I do, and that's the business model in a nutshell.
And
that makes sense?
So you'll hold this property for 15, 20, 30 years, or maybe indefinitely?
I mean, you know, because, you know, I mean, you put $175K of rehab in there, so your capital expenses is pretty much nothing. I mean, or you got new electrical, you got new plumbing, you got all new systems, and so your maintenance cost is relatively low. I have a home warranty on the house, so for the other bits and pieces. So you don't really have. It's 100-year-old house, so you don't have the wear and tear that you have if you buy a house that's 100 years old, because everything here has been updated to new. So, but it's a HGTV style home. It looks just like. I mean, I would have no problem living there myself. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And so, if you're a voucher holder and you're used to crappy houses in crappy neighborhoods with crappy landlords, okay, that's your choice. Okay, or that's your choices. Then if you're able to get a nice house in a nice area with a quote unquote great landlord, aka me. Every Mother's Day, I send my tenants bouquets of flowers. Every Christmas, I send them Christmas presents. If they get A's at school, I give them $50 gift certificate, and I give my tenants free vacations. How about that? They're not leaving. They're not leaving. And therefore, your biggest expense, which is turnover, is zero.
Yep. Okay.
And so the cash flow that you make stays in your pocket.
Right.
Okay. And so on. So that at a high level is what I've learned by going through 4 cycles. And what I've learned is to focus on minimizing turnover, focus on making sure your tenants are happy, making sure that your tenants are eternally grateful for that you gave them a chance, an opportunity to live in this great home. And if you can put all that stuff together and you have an asset that is on the path of growth, then you get cash flow, you get tax benefits, you get appreciation, you get all those things which real estate, provides you. And, as I said before, it works. And what Shane said earlier on, which is true, most investors think that their asset is the home, which it is, but the biggest asset is the relationship with your tenant. A lot of people don't understand that. Most investors, as long as the tenant doesn't call them, as long as they don't see the tenant, as long as they don't hear from them, all they want is their money. As long as they get the money, they don't want to see them, hear them, nothing. Okay. And the problem with that approach is that at some point, if you don't communicate or are in touch with your tenants, the first time you'll know that they're unhappy is when they give you a 30-day notice.
Yep.
At that point, it's too late.
Yep.
They're going, okay? So if you maintain that relationship, touch base with them, you can be proactive if there's any issues and problems, and therefore you can sort of, address the issue before it gets to the point where they give you a 30-day notice and they're leaving, which is going to wipe out all your profits that you made for the last year or two.
Yeah, makes sense. So the rent for, I guess, that example that you gave, what was it, 5,400 something per month? Is that what the market rate is for that house, or is there something going on with the voucher?
No, the voucher program it's all public knowledge. I mean, if you go to the websites, whether you're in Washington, whether you're in Prince George's County, whether you're in Northern Virginia, whether you're in Montgomery County, they publish what they pay. And so there's no surprises as to what the rents are for each either zip code or neighborhood. And so, you once you understand how it works, then that will direct you as to what you buy, where you buy, and how you get it. You know what I mean? So there's no like Joe's rate is there's none of that stuff going on. Yeah. Joe's rate is the same as Josh's rate, is the same as Shane's rate, the same as Joe's rate.
Right. What I'm asking is that 5,400, the market rate for that neighborhood.
No, it's slightly above.
Okay.
It's above market. So some neighborhoods, the rents are at market. and some neighborhoods the rents are above market. It just depends. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We get a question coming in from Stephanie online tonight for Dr. Joe. How do you attract tier 1 tenants on Section 8 is what she's asking.
How I attract them is I understand. Okay, this is what happened. It was in the mid-90s. If you're here in the DC area, you knew that DC was going downhill fast. Everybody was leaving DC. The control board took over, and DC was going nowhere real fast. I used to live in DC, and I had a house in Columbia Heights. And Columbia Heights in the mid-90s is not the same as the Columbia Heights of today. Okay? It was almost like if somebody asked you, where do you live, you'd be embarrassed to say you lived in Columbia Heights. That's how bad it was. Anyway, we used to live there, and our next door neighbor was shot dead in front of our house. So my wife says, we got to get the hell out of this place. So we moved out, and then I put it up for rent. And what happened was that this lady came over to my house, and she had a voucher. And she said, this is a house where I lived in. She said, I'm sorry, I don't want to rent your house. And I said, why? She said, well, it doesn't have a jacuzzi. I'm saying, excuse me? She said, it doesn't have stainless steel appliances or hardwood floors. I mean, this is a house where I lived in. Okay. And this is a voucher holder with a net worth of 0, telling me that my house was not worthy of her. Okay. And I didn't understand what was going on. I understand it now. What was going on was that there was we were going through a market downturn. There was flippers who couldn't sell their homes, so their other choice was to rent it. Okay, so now I'm competing with flippers who under normal circumstances I would never compete against, and they had the jacuzzis, they had the hardwood floor, they had the stainless steel appliances where I didn't. And the voucher rent that the tenant pays is based on their income. Okay, so it doesn't matter where they rent. Their rent is the same. Okay, so as long as their income doesn't change, their rent stays the same. So it doesn't make any difference to her whether she lives in my house or this house with a jacuzzi and all this other stuff. Her rent is still the same. So she's in a roundabout way is saying, look, I'm a great tenant. Everybody wants me. And there's a guy down the street who couldn't flip his house. And he wants me. You want me. Why the hell do I want to go to your house?
You don't have a
jacuzzi. I mean, that's the roundabout ways what's going on. And that's the reality of cycles. Okay, is that when the cycles come in, which is what we're experiencing shortly, things that used to work don't work. Okay, your competition changes. A whole bunch of things come into play, and if you've got a product that is not competitive, you may not be able to rent it, or you may not be able to sell it, and you're stuck. Okay, and all this debt that you've accumulated over by buying high and all this kind of stuff will wipe you out, and so on. So, again, these are experiences. So I wanted to have a product and the products I have are, it doesn't matter whether it's bad times or good times. I can always attract the quality people because it's a quality product in a quality area, and so on. So that's sort of some backgrounds to. Hopefully, so how do I attract? I'm sorry. How do I attract? Let me answer Stephanie's question. I attract the quality tenants by having a quality house in a quality area and being a quality landlord.
Yep.
Okay, that's the gist of it. Is that I know who these people are. I know what they want. I know what they don't want. I know where they want to live. I know where they don't want to live. I know who they want to rent from. I know who they don't want to rent from. And I sort of position my business with that understanding of the customer.
100%.
Yeah, makes sense.
That makes sense.
That's one of the biggest
We're actually getting another question from Sarah on YouTube. This is for Shane. Shane, I know there's no one better out there for doing these creative deals than you. Her question is, could you give her a very simple example of, let's say Sarah wants to buy a house for $200,000 in, it doesn't matter where, in Richmond. What are the different ways she could get that house with no money down? Like, what would be the different approaches you would suggest?
Well, before I get that, I want to emphasize what I've heard Joe touch on repeatedly here is the quality of the income, the location, having a really nice house or anything. Full disclosure, I have not had success in my real estate career managing Jerry Springer homes. I've just got the wrong people in the wrong area. And as Joe said, they look, and I was never a spreadsheet guy on this kind of nonsense, but they'll wear you out. For me, what works is a great property in a great area that's updated really nice, and you're vetting and looking for that person. We're not much different. Joe actually is holding properties for appreciation and long term. As I mentioned, I've gravitated more towards financing homes for families that want the same thing. I'm looking for the long term residual check. On our single family homes at our price point, we're trying to wrap $100,000 of equity, and we're trying to have anywhere from $500 to $1,000 of cash flow. That's what we're after. So rent it for $250, we sell it for $350. And you can do that by, eliminating all these hidden costs, appraisals, real estate commissions, the underwriting fees, and all that nonsense. But I do like a mixed bag. But back to the question on how to buy properties, when you're going into these situations with sellers, everyone thinks you just walk in with the strategy, like you have this key and all of a sudden it's going to magically unlock. You're going to pull out this key or this technique and it's going to magically unlock how you put together this deal. You just have to get all your data together first. You have to know what the uncomfortable circumstance is, what you're trying to solve first and foremost. That's the highest of the list. Then you can move down to the market comparables of what the rent pays, what a mortgage would be in the community, what the demographics are, whether it's gentrifying, as Joe talked about. Can you go from a 3-bedroom and 2-bath? Can you go to a 3-bedroom to a 5-bedroom? Make it bigger, make it smaller, change the context. Get not the highest and best value, but what you can do at the end of the day. So that's the third thing. And then the final thing is there's a mortgage that would need to be paid off. Surprisingly, on my campaign pre-COVID, not that long ago, I was running in, it was like the same person with just a different house. They were 79, 81 years old. They just inherited property, a tenant moved out or something like that, or they were selling a property, or they just, wife passed away, but they were all the same. And I was like, man, I'm on my 4th appointment, and every one of these individuals are literally the same profile, same, house and what needs to be done. So you can put together tons of things with people. I mean, we're currently master leasing 2 houses. I've been master leasing a house that I renovated, beautiful house in Upper Marble. It's probably worth $450,000 in today's dollars, maybe more. And, master lease is you lease it for one number and then you sublease it for another number. It's a lot of different ways to do it. That is a no money down situation. Obviously, you can pick up the payments, or you can structure, as I said before, short-term, intermediate, long-term financing. What I mean by that is, short-term is no longer on my current calendar, unless we have cash and we're going to sell a house to take it out. But that'd be 12 months or less. In other words, if you're going to maybe do a down payment at closing and make some installments for 12 months to the seller. I'm more of a 3-year to a 5-year type of person at the moment. That's what I have to see as a minimum. But and I don't know what you guys are seeing, but a lot of the appointments that I'm going on is, it's not like there's severe discounts, and the homes that have severe discounts, they need significant amount of work, and that's not something I'm really excited about doing at the moment. But I would do something that I could keep that meets the criteria exactly what Joe talked about. For me, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I'm in the metro, a large basement, off-street parking, walk your dog, because that gets me a $40,000 or $50,000 down payment. I get $40,000 from Jump Street. Now, Joe has to work for 4 years to get that, but he gets appreciation on his properties. So we get note equity if we, all into it for $250 or $350. So that's one of the advantages. So we're not the traditional, what we call the buy and hold, landlords, so to speak. I see it more of a portfolio where properties come and go in and out of the portfolio based on as the buyers are doing what needs to be done. Now, that being said, I mean, we have some real estate that we're sitting on as well that we'd like to keep over a long term. But I started this off as saying about 6 months ago, I took a serious look. I remember talking to Joe about this one time. I was like doing Monopoly, and I was like, maybe I should just trade in all my single family homes and do some commercial or self storage or something like that. And I'm glad I didn't. And as a result of COVID-19, now I like. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going that crazy, but Warren Buffett said something once which made a lot of sense to me, and also the late Jack Miller, who taught me a lot of this with Pete Fortunato and John Schwab. I mean, these guys are titans in the industry, 40 years of experience. Jack has passed. Warren said one thing. He says, if you look at all the problems every day, you'll be inclined to make a bad move. And what I do like about DC is I'm very long term. I think DC is a very long term, robust area. DC Metro, DC proper, all that. But if DC falls apart, God help the rest of the country. We're all in trouble. But that's what I like long term. So that's how you start with the sellers, and that's how you can do that. Clearly, the best way to do it is just network, just apprentice up, or joint venture with someone like myself that's more skilled, or Joe, and ask them to accompany you and go on appointments, or any of you guys. That's really what it's about. And you have to structure these things for cash flow for sure. And if you can get the triple play, which is a great house, a phenomenal, and a great community where it's going to appreciate, go up in value, there's strong cash flow, and you got really good underlying financing, then you can hang on to that indefinitely. And what you're able to do with it, as far as having it on your balance sheet to do other things, is significant. I mean, do you honestly think these people that are traditional fix and flip, or builders like I was, that show up with $400,000 or $500,000 of cash in a bank account right now, are a banker's dream? You can show it one day and move it tomorrow. Assets are a little bit different when you're looking for security and collateralization for people that want to lend to you, and that's going to definitely be really important. Actually, it's very important, and certainly now. So anything's possible with real estate. And to Joe's point, I mean, I too went through that. I was shocked that people that had that ownership mindset or that Section 8 mindset wanted a beautiful home and deserved one. And not that they shouldn't have got to use one, but they didn't have any network. And when we started providing that in 08, and the banks kind of had big problems, it just made it a lot easier for us.
Shane, you mentioned doing a master lease.
Yep.
I think a lot of people are a little bit hesitant to structure something like that.
Yep.
In the event that someone doesn't pony up, and because there's multiple parties, there's a break in the chain. Mm-hmm. What are you doing exactly to kind of prevent that?
Well, the master lease ones that we've done, as they're both relationship based. In both cases, I remodel the houses from top to bottom, and the owners want to remain as the owners. I would of course prefer to own it outright and do what needs to be done, but it's a fantastic way, if you're good at management, to actually get into a property. I'm sure there's a lot of landlords right now that are not receiving income on the properties. Maybe that house is not in the best area, or it could be, it needs work, whatever. But if you are willing to manage, which a lot of people are not willing to do, and really take a deep dive on learning how to do property management, I mean, probably the two best resources out there, in my viewpoint, are Mr. Landlord, Jeffrey Taylor, and Dave Tillney. I've learned an immense amount. I believe Joe has a nice management class as well. But if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to oversee and oversee and improve a property, and then also go out and do lead generation and go on appointments. Those are the three things that a lot of people really don't want to do. And the pillars of putting together a really good deal, are really simple. Is you have to do lead generation, and then it comes down to soft skills and negotiation and deal structuring. And if you're going to keep something long term, as I said, you have to structure the financing in a way that the asset can support it. And when I say asset, I mean you have a quality product, you have a quality income, because it attracts the right person. And when you put those two components together, it's a beautiful thing. It's hard to understand that. Like I said, it took me managing the Jerry Springer houses and the 2008 crisis to figure out. I know it sounds funny to you all, but believe me, you'll have a beautiful house and you think it's amazing, and it's just in the wrong part of town. And when you're there doing your open houses, you get the likes of people showing up that you've never dreamed of. And
So if I understand you correctly, a lot of stuff that you're doing now is like tenant buyers on the out sale.
I would prefer to say, Josh, I prefer to tell people is, look, we don't do leases. You know, it's hard enough for us to find a good property and make improvements for it. I just tell people, this is when I tell them on the property, I said, look, if you're just going to hang out here for a year or two or 3 or 4 years and get your own home, this is really not the home for you. I said, what we want is we want people that want to make this home theirs. So, you know, whether you qualify in 3 to 6 months or whatever, everyone's on a path, and that's what we like them to do. And I told you what it is on our smaller, that 350 range, like I told you, that median range. I like to wrap anywhere between 75 to 100,000 of note equity, and then I get a modest return on that, as well as the cash flow on the property. So that's where I'm at now because of the real estate cycle. Maybe back in 9 or 10 or 11, I would have kept it and let it, you know, ride up a little bit. But
can you explain to our viewers what you mean by wrapping a note? Could you explain what that would look like on a property?
We have quite a bit of financing. It should back up a little bit of private financing from ourselves and private retirees. And, you know, we give them a safe, consistent return. We've been doing it for years, monthly or quarterly, however we do it. And what I noticed is those kind of individuals that don't like to lose their money and like to compound it, they like to place it on performing assets that are not. You notice this trend: performing assets, nicely renovated, and great communities. Now, when I say private money, I mean relationship money with those retirees. I'm not talking about the private individuals right now that are scared, that are lumped into that hard money crowd. You know, the in and out projects. I'm talking about the people that want a safe residual return. So just to give you an example, I mean, we have one party that has a lot of dollars with us. Let's say like $400,000 or $500,000, and it had a nice project come along. And I do a one-off situation where they got an 18% cash on cash return, where it was a JV, where we put up some money and they put up some money, but that was on a property that was actually went retail. I'm kind of a little bit different right now. I'm going to continue doing the, you know, looking for those quality homes in the area, those gems, so to speak. I don't have to buy them at a steep discount. I have to just get them at the price that works, that will give me that upside potential, and someone can comfortably come in with a mortgage. So back to that Bowie house for $225. If I sold that, I was able to get that done for, let's say I bought it for $225 and I financed it for $250. Well, that's initially $25,000 on the note spread, right? But if I structure the financing where it's principal pay down for 36 months or something like that, and then I put a portion of the deal, like let's say $25,000 down in deferred payment, and I've initially reduced the price from $225 to $200, and then when I say set a portion on the sideline, I'll say, well, every 12 months I'll give you $5,000. So 12 month, 24, I'll give you $5,000. See what I'm doing there? Mm-hmm. Just a down payment, and then the installments themselves can actually go to the bottom line as well. So there's a lot of ways that you can put this together that works out really, really well with people. You just have to look at things from the point of view of, in my view, is this a great home in a great community? Can someone see this being their home long term? So critical what Joe's saying. It's got to be that long term mindset. So in our case, if they move into a financing situation from day one, or in 6 months or a year, it doesn't matter to me. I just would like the income stream no less than 3 years. My first house that I financed was in 2010, and Scott and I did it, and we said, well, no, we don't want this note to be out there for more than 3 years. Well, damn it, they paid us off on the third year, the last payment of the third year, and the money stopped. And after that, we said, we're never going to do that again, because it's really hard to move, you know, when it refinances you and the money comes back, you have to put it into something else. So that's what our secret sauce is, you know, having very, very favorable financing to be able to do this and facilitate that. and then also having lead generation so you can get direct to sellers, so you can actually structure these opportunities, and then a willingness to manage it. I just mentioned where you can go to the property management class. I mean, you can go to Jeffrey Landlord. He's amazing. I mean, I didn't even know there was 5 different levels of property management until I took his class, and I quickly realized that I wasn't even at the first level. This was after like 10 years. I didn't have an office book or a management book or anything like that. So, but people get it all twisted. They really get it all twisted. They don't really know. And I've seen Joe's beautiful homes that he's done. My gosh, people, and I'm sure Joe gets the grief back to him. Why would you take a beautiful home like this and put someone in it? Well, there's thousands of reasons, So yeah, I'm doing everything from options, master leases, all various kinds of structured financing, of course. I'll certainly, as I told you, Josh, if there's an elderly person that wanted to buy a brand new house, if I was building it, I'd be more than happy to take their house, their old house or something else they own, invest in property as a down payment on the new house and carry the financing. I'm all about speed, now and that was one of the biggest problems in 2008 that I did not know what to do. Is I did not know how to buy and sell houses without banks. And I believe we're going to really be in a very difficult place in 6 months with financing for investors. I mean, I'm already seeing the pain points now and the underwriting criteria. And, sellers are just simply not going to give their houses away when it's in good condition. So you just need to acquire things in a different way. Joe, if you don't mind mentioning, who is the national bank, the bank that you mentioned in DC that you're working with?
I'll tell you offline.
Gosh, I gotta love Joe, but anyway,
yeah, it's a local bank. I mean, we've developed a relationship with them, and they essentially what it is that. They're sort of a very community-oriented community bank, so they like to borrow within the DC area. And because of what we're doing, which is to provide housing for low-income families, giving them the opportunity, they really like that business model, which is in sync with their mission. So they give us, pretty good financing, and yeah.
So we can just always look it up on the public record after. Since he's enjoyed being vague a little bit, but anyways, back to your point.
It's all about relationships. I mean, financing is all about relationships, and as the market shifts, credit's going to tighten up, and it's going to be a lot more difficult. Banks are going to sort of, increase their requirements to get money, and so now is the time, if anything, to what I call become bankable. Position yourself to be able to get access to these funds, because it's going to be difficult for a lot of people. We're going to transition from a seller's market to a buyer's market, which means that those people who are able to purchase, those people who can get financing, are going to see some opportunities that maybe maybe did not exist a year ago or something like that. So now is the time to sort of position yourself to get financing. Now is the time to sort of position yourself to be ready. And as long as you can hold on to these assets during this sort of turbulent times, and we don't know how long that's going to be. It could be months, it could be years. We don't know. But as long as you got systems in place to sort of be able to hold on to these assets, and as long as the assets can cash flow, then market will come back, especially in the DC area. And so, looking back, I think a lot of us, if we knew what we knew then in 2010, 11, 12, 13, we probably would have bought more. I know I would have. And I know I would have kept a lot more, than what I did then. But, history has we have a tendency to go through cycles, and there will be some great opportunities in the coming months and years from now. And so I think now is the time to sort of get ready and develop those relationships with those financial institutions and lenders, whether it be hard money, private money, or institutional money. Because if they understand who you are, they understand your business model, and and you've got a proven track record of success, proven track record of paying on time, then because banks make money by lending money. I mean, that's how they make money. It's just that who they lend money to and what they lend money on will change. But they still will be lending money. And so we just need to be positioned in such a way that we are the ones who are attractive and understand what it is that they're looking for. And making sure that, it's like, it's like going on a basketball court, with playing with soccer cleats on, you're in the wrong you're in the wrong game. And so if you want to play basketball, make sure that you understand how to play basketball. So if we want to get financing, then we need to understand how the financing market is going to change, the rules, and all we have to do is go back to the good old days of 2009, 10, 11, 12, and find out, learn from that experience, what worked, what didn't work, and then sort of position ourselves such that we can be ready for these changing times in the next few months and years and so on.
Yeah, so I know there was a big emphasis on building relationships, but with both the the banks and direct to the seller as well. Matt Hilly had a question. Matt from Max House Price, and he's a lender, a hard money lender as well over at Temple View Capital. He's asking, what are some things you should look for to find a good seller financing opportunity? Some indications.
Well, I get that question all the time, and what happens is there's like 5 different levels of actually negotiations and deal structuring. And as you're aware of with lead generation, there's a variety of different channels. But you really have to go into the appointment open-minded. As I said, there's like a list of 5 things to focus on. First and foremost, what they're trying to actually solve, or what their issue, what their uncomfortable circumstance that is. Don't take a polite conversation. Doesn't need to take that long. But for me, it's pretty easy, because when I talk to people about what I do, I said, look, the name of our company is Capital Partners Group. We specialize in providing affordable housing that's nicely updated in great communities like this. And if it's not like in a community that we don't work in, like, for example, we don't do a lot of work in Capitol Heights, we'll let them know we can still assist, we can provide value, but this is not one of our service areas. And then based on how you take the conversation and the questions you ask and the stories that you tell for family you placed or whatever, I'm sure Joe does the same thing. He probably knows, he mentioned that. He knows the kids' birthdays, the schools, all those things. So we're very personable. So when we go on an appointment with the seller, they understand what it is, and it's more like they're involved with the cause. And I tell them up front, I'm like, look, I don't want to be lumped in or and I talk just like this. I don't want to be lumped in or added to these fix and flip guys. I don't want to be associated with that sin. Because a lot of them, are not getting the prices, or they haven't been getting the properties or the prices to do a good job and turn out a great home for families. And that's, the margins have been very thin for at least the last 2.5 to 3 years. But when you can do things differently and you can structure things differently, you can really provide value, not only for the sellers, and in many cases, our sellers have become private lenders for us long term because they've been so happy with how we handle the response for their particular home. So I could go on and on. I mean, I saw the problems a couple months ago, and some of the largest companies in the area put properties under contract that we went on appointments with that are now coming back, and now we're getting those calls. We're getting those calls from the seller, and they're saying, hey, look, we liked you then. We really like you more or less, because you were honest, you were authentic about your business. What can we do? And to your point, John, you can raise the issue as well. If we could just put it together like this, might that work for you? So we have a scenario right now where a property just came back. It went under contract for $325. We were in the $250 range on it, for the acquisition price. And it's like a $450, but maybe it's there, maybe not. And probably what we're going to propose is actually making the house nice, putting a tenant in it, or some type of financing play where they can actually get a down payment and income stream, and then we can do what they want to do. So it's just you just, for those folks that are brand new, you don't have to get, like, Joe is very accessible, Josh, you're accessible, John, you are. I mean, people have my number. I mean, it's just about lead generation, deal structuring, and negotiations. Seasoned people in our market that have been through the ups and downs that actually own inventory. Um, when all I did was build and sell, I'm certainly not remotely on the same skill set that I am today when I built 250 projects a year and buy and sold. You definitely learn a lot more by being involved in flooding housing, whether it's what Joe's doing or what we're doing or the financing. So that's how you set it up, John. It's just the initial conversation with people on what's possible.
So, Dr. Joe, do you think you'll be getting away from more traditional financing with everything that's going on in the marketplace right now, or how do you see, the way that you're doing business now changing in the next 6 or 12 months, if at all?
I mean, what I did, I think I alluded to it earlier on. I realized that financing is the grease that keeps that machine going. Okay, real estate machine going. Once that grease dries up, then the whole thing seizes. And so that's what I realized, the importance of financing. I think we all know on a conceptual level, but really it is. So therefore, if you understand that, then the question is, how do you make sure that grease is always there? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I realized that, it's sort of focus more or pivot more to the local institutions. I mean, I'm buying in Washington, D.C., so it's, you're talking about $500,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes. Typically, I buy between $400,000 and $500,000. It's very hard to get private money at $500,000 from one individual. It's just not realistic. Okay, so what I realized was that the money for those kind of transactions, a bulk of it has to come from reliable sources, which are financial institutions. Okay. And I realized that I didn't want to pivot towards the national financial institutions. I wanted to pivot more to the local financial institution who I can sort of take the time to develop those relationships with. Okay. I can take the time to understand who they are. I can take the time to educate them on who I am, how I do business. I can take them over to my projects and they can get a feel for my business model. Invest that time to nurturing those relationships. Because whenever there's a gray area in financing, which there often is, it's helpful if you've got advocates within the organizations who can push it over the edge and things like that. And they can possibly give you favorable terms, favorable financing rates and things like that. That's all about the relationships, okay? So I took the time, and I'm continuously taking the time to nurture those relationships, because I realized that if those relationships are strong, then I'm able to get some financing for these new opportunities that's going to arise. So the way I structure all my deals is a 3-part strategy, financing anyway. The bulk of it is coming from these relationships with these local banks, either lines of credit or the acquisition type financing. Then the second tier is private investors. These are people who know me. I've taken the time to to nurture those relationships, just that they borrow me money. And then the third part is my own personal money. So, how I do these transactions is a hybrid of institutional money, local banks, commercial banks, private investors, and personal money. I don't see that changing, as we go through the next this turmoil. I don't see it, at least for me, I don't see that changing. I have no problem going to banks. I understand what they're looking for. And I've taken the time to sort of develop those sort of understanding.
We got a question coming in from online. It's from Chris Guzman. He asks, Shane, are you a fan of Subject 2 deals?
I'm going to answer this very carefully. In the Washington, D.C. market, I would say no. But the reason I'm not a fan of Subject 2 is because most of the people that implement it do it in the wrong way. I would be more inclined, or it's better for them actually for the seller to sell the property in a wraparound mortgage. I believe there should be some type of walk away money. And more importantly, if you're actually going to buy something in that capacity, you need to make sure that you have the money to close and you have the financial resources to make the payment, just like you said you would, on the underlying lien. So typically, when I've done subject to, I'm talking about structure. I'm doing a wraparound from the seller, wraparound deed of trust. And what that does is that actually puts something on the public record that they've actually sold it to me on financing, and I've taken title, so they can offset their books. If they were to go out and get a new house or get credit, they can actually show the income stream against the note that they prepared versus just a traditional sub two. A lot of attorneys locally in the last year really just kind of like went silent on this. There's a few that still will do it, but you have to have everything in place and do what needs to be done. So I'm more a fan of what we call sub three, which is a specialized strategy where the actual property would go from the seller or my seller to my buyer, and then we've underwritten them okay in that situation. That's kind of advanced, and we can talk about that or whatever. But it's a great way to get started. But as I keep saying, Joe nails it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're putting together creative deals. You've heard me say it, or if you're doing his deals. I mean, financing is what matters. You have to have the financing, otherwise you have to structure that. That really is, a part that really makes it go. We're in a more expensive other areas like Indiana, whatever. It's quite common to do a lot of subject to or Iowa transactions or lower economic areas because the price points are much lower. The risk is much is different. Here it's you're $350 for the kind of houses that we like, $350 to $400,000. Or if you're in DC, I mean, you easily go from $500 to $1 million. So I would be more inclined if I did a purchase like in DC for a $700,000 house, is to actually bring on a private party in a joint venture relationship where I provided a down payment to the seller, right? Some type of installment agreement, could be ideally 3 to 5 years or 120 months, 10 years, and then the balance at a later date. I don't have any problems in making those proposals or talking to sellers about that today. I've done deals over $1 million with financing. Seller to seller. It's a great place to do it. But as Joe said, you have to nurture your small community banks. That's something that we don't want to do that because the reason I didn't want to do it is after 2008, it left a really sour pill in my mouth because I was getting demand notices even though we were like 8 months into the projects. Like I had 3 projects that were underway that we got caught with. And it made me so nervous. I didn't want to hurt my credit. So I moved everything into my personal name. And then I ended up dealing with 3 pretender lenders versus doing the local commercial bank. So I would always say if you're going to get financing, and I agree with Joe 100%, get the local company and ride it until they go under USDA or FDA or whatever. Don't do what I did the last time is just refinance everybody. And now I'm dealing with IndyMac pretender lender. I'm dealing with Countrywide pretender lender. Now I'm dealing with Astoria Federal pretender lender. None of these are banks. Lehman Brothers is going under. Bank of America is getting a $5 billion infusion from Buffett. So, I had a master class very quickly in the payment forbearance, short sales and all that because it's tough. I mean, so I like any of those type of situations that you can do it. If there's equity in the property, it's a good location. The person's getting a walkaway check. Like a friend of mine, we picked up a property, and here's a classic example of it. She had an interest rate of like 3.75. Her husband had passed like 6 months prior. She was on a fixed income. This was about a year ago, Josh. So 265 was the underlying mortgage. I'm sure everyone sees that. So 1642.81 was the payment, I think, on that. And she just didn't want to carry it anymore. And she moved in with her daughter and we took over the responsibility. So in that case, it was the right house, right community, good terms. I was able to find a great family that made it their own. We went to closing and it was financed to them at closing. So it literally went from the seller, right, to our buyer. So that's not a sub two in the traditional sense, like sub two, because I would end up on title. In that case, I didn't end up on title. I just ended up holding the note.
So you had a wraparound mortgage around the underlying mortgage from the original bank.
Yes.
Is there any worry or concern there for the underlying mortgage having a due on sale clause triggered, or how do you deal with that?
A friend of mine, it's funny that you mentioned that. A friend of mine, Luke, actually posted on one of our private Facebook groups today about that. He actually took over a property and had a deed tray or a conveyance of deed, and he received an acceleration notice from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So literally just in this climate, this just happened. And actually, so he reinstated the loan, of course, at settlement. So that was done. He made the first payment, just made the second payment. He actually called the bank up, and the bank's like, look, man, you're cool. We're going to go to bat for you, and we're just going to work on a rescission for you.
Oh, wow. So as soon as he brought the loan current, they just let it go?
No, they accelerated it after he brought it current.
Oh.
In other words, they demanded the payoff.
Okay.
But, you know, if you know what you're doing, like the property I just told you about that we did not that long ago in the distance, there was a walkaway check for the seller.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Her situation was that. So, you know, I have the power of attorney. I talk to the bank. I let them know what's going on. I'm like, hi, this is Shane with, you know, the so-and-so family. And, you know, we're handling all aspects of the utilities, the property management, and whatever. So you'd be surprised on how accommodating banks are as long as you do good business. But I would not encourage, like I told you, I don't have the secret formula for dealing with the wrong type of communities and the wrong kind of people. That's not my skill. Jerry Springer and them, they won.
Jerry.
Exactly, man. Breaking your windows out of your doors, and I mean, I've done it all wrong. I mean, you know, one thing that Joe hasn't talked about is like he's DC proper and his service area is very finite. Ours is as well. I've been the guy that used to drive one way for an hour to pick up rent at this house and then an hour the other way at this house. I mean, it was like the Bermuda Triangle. It was terrible. That's just not the way you want to do this business. But for us, you know, figuring out how to be able to offer the financing, like I said, there's a lot of self-employed, there's a lot of employed, there's a lot of people that just want the same rates that banks do it, and you can do it quicker. So, you know, I received 2 calls this past week. I mean, one's from our existing tenant, and we talked about this before he moved from Colorado. Said, look, you know, this house is available. If you'd like to make it your own, that's certainly what we're looking for. You heard what I said before. And, you know, called the other day and said he'd like to move forward. And then this other party has a, you know, ITN number. And he said he has $40,000 and that we have a house in a certain location. Well, someone tells me to have $40,000 to put down on a house, especially now on a $350,000 product. How quickly can I close my hand? You know, because I don't have all the management headaches. I don't have any upkeep. Typically, I've done what Joe's done. We've renovated it really nicely. It's a good home. And then they just send in the checks. But, you know, I don't know if I would, maybe Joe can talk about this. I don't think if we had the assets that we didn't have them, I don't think we would be bankable or could easily build the relationships in this institutional if we did not have that stuff on our balance sheet. I you know, I haven't tried, but in 2008, I mean, I had a lot of cash and no one would really talk to me about that. Whereas they're definitely a lot more favorable when you have real estate and you've owned it and managed it for a while. Mm-hmm. But you know, but for the young people, I mean, by all means, they shouldn't. Now is the time to actually either apprentice with someone or joint venture or join a you know, program, especially in their local market, and they can really go far fast. I mean, we can teach them what kind of houses to buy, where to buy, how to fix them. I mean, you don't want to own them and then find out they're not the ones that you want, that you don't want, right? You don't want the market to tell you. You don't want the screaming people on your saying, hey, you bought the wrong one. That's not what you want.
Right. Hey, Shane, earlier I want to ask you, I want to bring something a little bit practical to the viewers. How do you start that conversation with the seller that you're talking to propose some sort of seller financing?
For me, It's real simple. Like I said, I can ask some questions on that. So I might say, the name of the company. I might say, so the name of the company is Capital Partners Group. We specialize in affordable housing, right? That's nicely updated for good families. And our role was relatively simple. So we bring the financing to closing to cover the closing cost, right? And make the improvements so they can make their house, they can make the home theirs. People would like a home, not a headache, right? That's literally, I would say that. And then I could just ask them a question. In the event that I could find a great family that would take on the responsibility of making payments for your house, would that work for you? And they'll say, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about a triage call, knowing the questions I need to ask, telling the stories that what needs to be done. And then what it does is that opens up the possibility of doing it. I think, maybe Joe has a different point of view, but I don't know why people lead with cash in the conversation. I just don't, it doesn't make sense to me. It's not remotely intelligent. I think people should, let the seller push you there and convince you that they need all the dollars and there's a very specific reason they need for the dollars. Because no one honestly believes, especially right now, that you can just run down to the bank and get a loan and do what you need to do. I mean, you can't even go through the teller line at the moment. So it's a really easy conversation with the seller is just, as much as I'd like to go down tomorrow and fill out an application, there's no one there. How about we do it like this? And that's literally the conversation that we'll be having tomorrow. So the only cash that I could close with is private individuals, Joe's money, Josh's money. That's what I have immediately to do. Otherwise, it's some other application. And I've had a couple hard money lenders say, "Well, are you guys still active in the business?" Of course, we're active in the business. If you buy properties for long-term appreciation, and you're bullish on this market, just buy the properties in the right location, structure the financing if it's with the sellers, or structure with your private lenders. You don't have to have seller financing day one. You can get a short-term solution with them. You can get an intermediate solution with a private lender or in the bank. But you're going to need a little bit of time, especially in the market now, and you can get long-term financing when you have the property improved. But
Absolutely.
some people right now are on the third, like a couple of the deals that were sent to us last week. Some people are on the third lender in less than a week.
Wow.
We got a couple shout outs to Dr. Joe coming in from online. Ben Benita says, "Holy Joseph Asamoah, the legend. It's been years, my friend." You're also getting a shout out from Sandre Jabre. Dr. Joe, Sandra wants to know, what do you think of property managers to handle rent and toilets?
Rent and toilets. Is that the same thing? No, if you believe, like I do, that the key to success as a buy and hold investor is to have zero turnover. If you believe that, okay, then you've got to do what you've got to do to make sure that that's what happens. The problem is that the business model of a lot of property management companies, that they make money when there's a turnover. There's a new application, there's a new, what's it called, security deposit, they get a piece of that, and so on. If there's a lot of repairs, they make a cut of that, and so on. So that's at odds with the investor, in my opinion. Okay, in the investor, you want zero turnover.
Yep.
Okay, in the investor, you don't want somebody jacking up, their maintenance expenses unnecessarily and so forth. So what I realize is that if I want to have zero turnover, I need to take control of who comes into my home, which is the screening. Okay, and I do similar to what most people do. I check credit, I check income. More importantly, I contact the current and the previous landlords to make sure that they got great rental history, and also check the eviction records. But the last thing is I go to the person's home to see how they keep their home, because what I found is that how somebody keeps their home today is how my house will be in 3 months, guaranteed. If I go to the home and I like what I see, I feel pretty good that my house is going to be kept up. If I don't like what I see, then that's how my house is going to be. So as far as I know, there aren't any management companies that go to that level of screening, you know, and that is absolutely key. It's that screening process.
Yep.
Because one mistake there, okay, you're setting yourself up for a disaster. You're setting yourself up for a nightmare. You're setting yourself up for tenant from hell, especially in a downturn when money's tight. You still got mortgage payments to make. Your house is sitting empty. You know, you need somebody in there, and somebody shows up there looking good, talk a good game, and you know, and you lower your screening standards and you let them in, only to find out it was a bad move. Because it's easier to get somebody in your house. It's a lot more difficult to get them out once they're in. So part one is the screen. I didn't find a management company that took it to that level of detail. And the other thing, which was, I think I talked about before, the other key to the having zero turnover is that relationship management. Is making sure that the tenants are happy. And I alluded that I give Mother's Day bouquets, Christmas presents, gifts, free vacations, okay, to all my tenants. Nobody does that. No management companies aren't set up for that. And that's the reason why I don't get turnover. That's the reason why, coupled with a good house in a good area, that's how you get zero turnover. And I just hadn't found anybody that does it my way. So what I ended up doing essentially was getting an assistant and teaching her my way, such that that's how. So I don't personally manage my properties per se, but I have an assistant that manages my properties for me, using it my way, my systems, my process, and things like that. So I don't enjoy toilets as much as Stephanie. You know, I mean, I don't wake up in the morning, oh, let me look at some toilets. You know? No, I'm looking for deals. I'm looking for spending time with investors and doing what I want to do. Okay. And the best way to avoid all that nonsense is to screen well, make sure your tenants are happy, have a good product, and nurture that relationship and value that relationship, because the tenant is your key. If you pick them right, and it works out fine. So hopefully I answered Stephanie's question. Wow,
that's genius. Looking at their current existing place and kind of assessing from there. Because I guess property management companies aren't willing to do that because they kind of assume that there's going to be a turnover every 2-3 years, maybe even every year, right? So they're not willing to put in that extra work. I guess you're putting in that extra work up front and finding that tenant that's literally going to stay forever. So I mean, I guess that time spent is well worth it. Would you say?
Yeah, that extra hour, 2 hours going to their home, I see this as a 10, 15, 20-year relationship. Okay, that's how I see it. Okay, mm-hmm. So I don't have a problem investing an extra hour or two because I only have to do that every 10, 15 years. If I had that revolving door where every year they go out and somebody else comes in, I wouldn't do it. It's too much stress. It's too much hassle. And that's really the part that will drive any buy and hold investor out of this business, is that sort of tenants and toilets, aggravation, tenants that don't want to pay you, tenants that trash the house, tenants that are a pain to deal with, tenants that sort of every other month you're down at landlord tenant court. All that stuff will drive you insane. And so I don't want to be a part of that. Okay. And so I realized that if I don't want to be a part of that, I've got to run my business completely different than the norm. And that's what I've shared with you just now.
I agree.
I guess we got to start thinking about wrapping this up for tonight. I guess the question I have for each of you guys is, what are the 3 things that you would want investors out in the audience tonight to know, based on everything that's going on in the world right now, based on the COVID-19 pandemic, based on where you think we are in the real estate cycle? What are the 3 things, investors should know and maybe act on right now? I'll start with you, Shane.
I think the most important thing, like unequivocally at the moment, is if you're a new investor or even if you're a seasoned investor, is you need to align yourself with people in the marketplace that are actually in the trenches, that have been doing this for a while, the lessons learned and the missteps that you can miss and the relationships that come from that for, how to put deals together. It doesn't matter whether you're a starter or an estate builder or an ender in this process. But, we're officially past where you can talk about real estate. We're left with the people now that are, you're going to get found out really quick if, that either know it or don't know it. It's just at a different time. So that's number one. Number two is, there's three reasons that investors go broke: is bad advice, poor management, and lack of cash flow. And you need to solve all three of those problems. And the third thing is, if you don't invest in yourself, no one else will. Now's the time to, really double down on your own skills and figure out what your calling, your path is. Which just because you might not be interested in managing properties doesn't mean that somebody else will. Just because you're not willing to fix properties doesn't mean someone else will. You can be a deal finder. You can be whatever you want to be and be part of that long-term transaction. I don't have any. I'm in properties that we own now that we're with other people. It's a long-term relationship. So that would be my number one thing. And then secondly, I learned this in 2008 from Jimmy, is don't be afraid. Finally, Joe talked about this, is, the financing or the money is so important. Don't be one of these people who are so worried about you got to pay 2 or 12 for money or 5 and 15. There's actually nothing wrong with joint venturing with someone, not being stressed about any payments or anything, and giving away a lion's share of the profits to take that stress off your plate. If I knew just that simple strategy in 2008 or 9, I would have been probably doing 50-50 deals with money partners, and they would have been getting well beyond, big returns when I was turning over a lot of properties to sell, and I wouldn't have had the responsibility of a monthly payment. Those are my suggestions.
Nice.
Okay, so for me, I would say three things. Well, I'll maybe. Okay, so the first thing is, I think people on the call should work on themselves. Okay, take the time to understand who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears. Get buy-in from your family, friends, associates. Because if you don't get that, it's hard. Okay, so work on yourself. Next thing is sort of identify your area of focus. Shane's got some great strategies. I've got some great strategy. Josh, you've got some. John, everyone's got different niches that they're in. You can't do it all. That's one thing I realized. You've got to identify which one is for you, given where you are, your limitations, your risk tolerances, your finances. Pick one. Okay. And learn the basics of that. You don't need to be the guru of that. Just learn the basics. But more importantly, I think, is to identify people who are successfully doing what it is that you want to do. Okay, because those people have already there's no need to recreate the wheel. There's people out there who've already done it. There's people out there who've been through cycles. There's people out there who've made all the mistakes that you're going to make if you try and do it yourself. Okay, you want to identify these people and learn from their mistakes, learn from their sort of experiences. As the saying goes, a wise man learns from his mistakes. A genius learns from other people's mistakes. Okay, you want to learn from other people's mistakes rather than making the mistakes yourself. Okay, you don't want to learn from your mistakes. I'd rather learn from Shane's mistakes rather than me making those mistakes. I'd rather learn from Josh's mistakes rather than me making. We don't have a whole lot of time. Okay. We want to leverage on the experiences of people who are successfully doing what it is that we want to do. There's a difference between people doing it and people who are successfully doing it. Okay. You want to identify those people who are successfully doing what it is that you want to do. Figure out a way whereby you can create win-win scenarios with them, so you can incentivize them to help you. Okay. And then you get on with it and do the deals, make it happen, pull the trigger. Otherwise, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, hey, how's it going? Well, I'm still learning. I'm still reading, and at some point you have to pull the trigger and make it happen. You're going to make mistakes. That's the way it goes. But if you have seasoned people around you, you're focused, and you got those skill sets, it's okay. The first one doesn't have to be a home run. My first one wasn't a home run. I'm sure Shane's wasn't the first one was a home run. It's okay. You you learn from those and you keep on moving forward, and hopefully you'll get to where you want to go to, which I think most people on this call is financial independence. Okay. That's what I think everyone's striving for, more control of our time so we can do what we want to do, what's important for us. And real estate can allow that to happen, but you have to start doing it, not just reading about it. So that's my suggestions on what people can do. I know it's more than 2 or 3, but it's probably 4 or 5. But that's okay.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a common theme between what Shane and Joe said. I often like to, study success, and you always want to find the common denominator between that. And it's oftentimes just finding the right mentors and coach, not necessarily coaches, but just, someone who's done it before you, and you don't have to repeat those same mistakes. So how can people reach out to you guys if they want to reach out with a question, or perhaps they might have a deal that they can't structure, may need your help with?
I'm actually, Facebook is kind of my guilty pleasure. So, people can actually get on there and text me or say, hey, can you help me out? I'm more than willing, ready, willing, and able to do it at any time. I make myself accessible. If the property's in my service area, Prince George's County, Lower Montgomery, and DC, I'll even go on appointments with folks and help them set up the conferences and do what needs to be done. I do have an apprentice program, but I only take on like 3 or 4 people a year, and it's more advanced at this point. Maybe I'll change that in the future, but they're welcome to reach out. I like that. It's just an easy way for me to log that versus blowing up my phone. And I do get a lot of calls from people saying, what do you think about this? How does that work? What's going on? And that's just a good way for them to do it.
Okay. Yeah, you can reach me different ways. Joe Asamoah, that's JoeAsamoah. You can see it on the screen. .com. So essentially it's my name.com. So that should be pretty straightforward. You can reach me that way. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook now. So you can reach me at Dr. That's Dr. Joe Asamoah on Instagram and Facebook. I do host Wealth Wednesdays on Instagram and Facebook. On the website, I usually talk about a subject on real estate. My whole thing is to encourage people to build wealth, build a legacy, develop passive income streams. So I do a Wealth Wednesdays. I've been doing that for about 4 months now. And I also, every other Friday, I do a live stream on Bigger Pockets. So on their YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook platforms, 3 p.m. Get Real with Dr. Joe. So if you want to check out that, I just did one last Friday, so I'll be doing it in a couple of weeks from now. I do have what I call a joint venture program, which the idea is that my belief is that the best way to learn this stuff is not to read a book or listen to some YouTube videos. Is to do a deal. That's how you learn. Okay. And short of that, the next thing is look over the shoulder of somebody who's seasoned, experienced as they do a deal. So for those people who are interested in my strategy, which is the BRRRR strategy, to focus on cash flow and appreciation, I do have a JV program where I give people the opportunity to look over my shoulders as I do a transaction from start to finish. It's usually about 6 to 8 months. It's not a 2-day boot camp. It's not a thing. It's a real. You're part of the team. You're part of the design process. We decide which walls we're going to break out, which walls, where we're going to put the kitchen, where we're going to put the bathroom, how we're going to make 5 bedrooms from this 3 bedrooms, all that stuff. You're part of that. How we're going to finance this thing or refinance this thing once it's all said and done. The permit process, the Section 8 process, the inspection process, all that stuff is all covered. It's soups and nuts. And so if you're interested in that, I'm starting another project, in fact, on Saturday, since I just bought the house a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in that one, I do have another start this Saturday. So you can check it out. Go to my website and you can get more information. But I do enjoy helping people. The hardest part of what I do is when I have to, every house I have 10 to 15 people that apply, which means that I'm turning down 9 to 14 people. It's very depressing when you have to turn good people away. So I'm trying to encourage more people to do what I do. and hopefully I can then refer, hey, although I've got this house is rented, give John a call. He's got a house, maybe, or give Josh a call, give Shane a call, because they're doing what I'm doing. So I can then hopefully provide leads, and hopefully we can sort of make a dent in these opportunities. We can make money, but also we can make a difference in other people's lives.
Shane, Dr. Joe, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I got a lot out of this. I think big takeaways for the community tonight is that, if you want to be in this business for the long haul, you got to focus on strategies that are more stable. Focus on stuff that's more of a 5 to 7 year or 3 year outreach. Focus more on the cash flow. Focus more on the people, and maybe focus on more stable strategies. And as well as the financing that's so critical. Either build the financial relationships now with banks or figure out how to do creative deals. And it sounds like that's going to be more and more of a focus the next year or two and moving forward. John, I don't know if you have any final thoughts for tonight.
I mean, we can definitely have a conversation for hours, but yeah, I mean, it's been pretty value packed for the past hour or so. So, I just really appreciate their time. I know Shane's been on here before. I know Joe, really busy with, his podcast and other shows and his mentoring program. So, I really appreciate them, taking the time and sharing with the group here. So
thank you guys so much. If anyone in the community has an additional question, please post them on Facebook, post them on YouTube, and I'm sure our speakers will get back to you. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
All right. Good night, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.